Okay. Mike, you said you're here.
I am here.
Erwin Steinberg,
I'm here.
Jay Levin, and Roger.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, so let's do the legal thing here. Due to the governor's statewide disaster declaration relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and current public health guidelines for social distancing, I've determined that it is not prudent for the members of the Economic Development Commission or staff to convene in person for this morning's meeting. Therefore, the members of the EDC are attending this meeting by video conference. The same conditions that require barring access to the public, those same conditions bar access to the public for in-person attendance. In light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen to the meeting through Zoom platform or by phone, as indicated in the meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, this meeting will be recorded. More or less. So having done that, we have some minutes from the last meeting that have been circulated. And we have any comments?
There's one thing that
yes.
that will be changed, that Trustee O'Connor was referred to as a commissioner, so I'll change that in there.
Can we give her a dual commission or something like that?
Thank you.
Like you don't have enough to do, I know. Okay, any other corrections or additions, or can we get a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So we're supposed to do a roll call vote, so it's all audible. Anybody opposed to approving the minutes as modified? Done. Then we've got a string of things where we're just kind of updating ourselves on what's going on. The International Council of Shopping Centers has had their meeting. Pam, were you able to go or attend?
Yes, I did attend the webinar, and I think Mina also attended. There was a speaker, Paul Thompson, and he was from the Global Retail Business Development Company, and he reported on trends that continues for retailers. And what he was saying is they're continuing, I think we all know this, to close underperforming stores, but retaining customers through shoring up their performing stores with innovations in mobile app data. So, and what he was reporting is that, you know, there's still this round of retail closures going on, shoring up the performing stores, but at the same time, doing more with digital and mobile app data. And he reported that retailers will need to service their customers through a combination of bricks and mortar coupled with this service online. He called it omni-channel. So again, you know, this is something we've been seeing, I guess, in the industry, that there is still this round of limiting bricks and mortar, but going with a combination of, you know, surviving performing stores with shoring up mobile data. And that's kind of what we've been seeing. And other trends he's seen is that there seems to be a pretty good retention of high-end and low-end retail customers, that they're easier to capture, but harder to capture that middle market. So I guess that's kind of what we've been seeing too. And he advised that we should look at competition and trends in neighborhood gentrification regularly and project what the consumers need at least 5 years out. So that was his recommendation, that you survey the marketplace at least 5 years out to see what the trends are in terms of local competition, neighborhood gentrification trends, and so you could keep ahead of the market. And that was his advice to us.
It sounds sensible, but where does Long Grove get a crystal ball that tells it what the market's going to be like in 5 years? That's a challenge.
That's a good question. I think basically, what he was suggesting is that we keep ahead of understanding what the market is, but defining the market a little more broadly, of course, maybe 5, 10, 15-mile radiuses in terms of our ability to capture customers. I mean, I think that's kind of what we've been talking about. And, we need to, that's something I think we can work on by talking to Lake County partners. We're going to also report on our discussions with Roman, when he talked to us about census projects. And I mentioned to him, and we could talk about this later in the agenda, to help us think about how we can capture this kind of broader market data, bringing in 5, 10, 15 miles of traffic, given our pretty small reach. So I think that's kind of the challenge we have, to continue to try to develop that data and to incorporate that into our website, because in terms of site selection, that is the recommendation, that you broaden your reach and you demonstrate to potential retailers that you've got the customers, if not in your immediate area, at least within maybe 10, 15 miles. And I think clearly we can do that, but we're probably going to need some help with that.
Has anybody else been in downtown Long Grove in the evening recently? I was really surprised. I went through and it felt a little bit like, maybe this is aging me, a bit like what I remember as Rush Street, where there were a lot of places that had activity going on in the evening and people just walking from place to place with the different venues and music coming from different places. It seemed really lively, much more than I'd seen it recently. And then Sunday I was in Park Ridge and we were there for breakfast, and it's a concentration of places to eat, and yet there was lots and lots of walking back and forth between all these places. So there was, maybe there's some future to be had in being a concentrated, walkable place to dine and just relax in the future.
Right. I think that's what we've been saying, Roger. I think we, in terms of, and I guess that's a recommendation from all these marketing firms that, whatever your strengths are, you need to promote them. For us, I think having a walkable downtown, I think, and ironically with the pandemic, I think people are, kind of looking inward to what they have in their immediate neighborhoods and maybe rediscovering a lot of what they have locally. And, I think that, as you're saying, I think that has presented an opportunity for Long Grove. And I've been to the downtown, on not this weekend, but several weekends. And I've seen the same thing, Roger, where there does seem more foot traffic and more local activity with the bars and restaurants. And that's something I think we could take advantage of in the future.
Sounds good. Lake County Partners, Mike, anything going on there?
I've kind of gotten out of that because with three of us,
Okay.
I didn't want. I was on the initial call, but I haven't been following up because I didn't want to have any more than two of us on a call at any one time.
Yeah, I spoke to, this is Pam again. I spoke to Ron Lands the other day, and he is agreeing to present at our September 22nd meeting. And he's going to acquaint us with his background, but also what Lake County Partners can do for us, basically, the services that they provide. And, I had in my discussion with Ron, he was also reiterating what you were saying, Roger, that, there seems like there is a trend to, even in terms of residency, that people are, with the pandemic and maybe the inability to commute to the downtown Chicago area, he's seeing starting to see a growth in some of the Lake County suburbs in terms of, just people moving out here and, some vibrancy, not only with the business community, but just with people relocating. So I think we could talk to him a little bit more about that, and also what Lake County Partners can do for us. They're an information clearinghouse, as we know, for statistical and demographic data, which I think we could use a little more mining of that for our website. And business visits, Lake County Partners seeks face-to-face visits with local businesses to examine their issues and their expansion plans and their competitive and workforce challenges. So I think, that's a great resource for us to understand what Lake County Partners can do for us, our commission, but for our local businesses. And they're also a great clearinghouse for trends to understand what businesses are looking to locate to Lake County. So I think that will be a good discussion for us.
Yeah, this is, again, keeping constant contact, it makes a lot of sense. So that's good. Erwin, the mailing situation?
As you know, Ron was very helpful to us when we wanted to introduce Eric Flanagan of CFI to Lake County, and he really, he jumped right in there and spoke with him and had a couple of meetings with him too. So I think they are a very good resource for us, and it's worth our time to hear what they can do, when we have potential candidates for new businesses, but also just what they're doing, what they're seeing in Lake County. So again, I thought my discussion with him about more residents locating to the Lake County area was really very interesting. I thought, a number of suburbs, but I know that can be good for Long Grove, of course.
Ron Lands and Kevin Considine, the president, were both very helpful with our push for Chris Kindle Market too, in that marketing pitch there. So keep them in mind.
Yeah, right, Mike. I think the more we can feel like, they know us and know what we're looking for and what we're doing, that's really going to be helpful. And whenever we've asked for anything, from Kevin or Ron, they've just jumped right in. So I think that September 22nd meeting will be great.
Real good. Erwin, on the mailing thing, we all saw, I think, the draft letter looked great.
Yeah, so two items. One is I sent to Denise over the weekend a listing of bankers and lawyers. And I have yet to receive any input from anyone else on the commission. If you have any bankers or lawyers that you'd like to add to the email list, please send that to Denise. In addition, I'd like to ask the village board if they have any recommendations of people they've worked with and who our bank is and our law firms that the village works with. I think that would be good to add to the list. Right now, it's about, I don't know, 20 or 30 names. I think we should have a goal of 100 or 200 names on there. So let's keep adding to that. A, and B is, was the letter approved by Dave, Denise, or the board? What's
Yeah,
the status?
this is Jenny. Yeah, the board says it's great. So you're good to go.
Okay, so Denise, you could send that out, but let's keep this on the agenda. We need some more names to add to that. It's skinny, and I know that, you know, we have a bank in the village, we have lawyers we deal with, so let's at least add those. And I know, Roger, you're gonna try to get to me an expanded list when you get these.
My new hard copy version of Sullivan's is supposed to come this month, which will open up the door to me to give you a nice bunch of lists. So
Great.
it's in the mail.
So I think we've made great progress on it. I think we should discuss maybe doing this quarterly. I just throw that out. So a letter goes out quarterly. We could add or subtract a paragraph in there, and I could work with Denise on that. Does that make sense to continue it? I think we have to have constant contact with these people.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe the next one we direct them, you know, to the website of a specific area that we have on our website. So I'll think about that. Denise, I'll work with you on that.
Sounds good, Erwin.
Next item going down, our flow chart. Is that moving along?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute there. I'll have an update on that at our next meeting.
Okay. And the quarterly reports, which I think we've all seen one of anyway. Denise, anything to add on that?
I don't think so. I think it's Pam added some content to it, so I think it's in good shape. So that's something that could probably, because the intention was to send that to the board, correct?
Yeah. I was surprised to see one of the village's e-newsletters contained a paragraph or so about what the EDC has been doing, which is a nice way to let people know what's going on here and hopefully make them think of some ways that might help or some things we might do. It seems it prompted at least one call from the pastor of the Long Grove Church. So he was interested in seeing what they could do to work with the EDC. I called back, but they were not at home over the weekend. They said call back during business hours, Monday to Friday. So I'll call them back today and see what he had in mind. Interviews on the census project. Anybody have anything further from talking with Mike?
I had a conversation shortly after our last EDC meeting. There's just some questions on perspective on what EDC can do to drive business. It was pretty informal. Not sure that anything came out of it that needs immediate attention. But I think I gave him some perspective on what we're trying to do and some of the successes that the commission has had even prior to my joining. So I don't know if there's any plan for follow-up after that. Pam, I know you had a conversation with him also, correct?
Yes, I spoke to him, and I was interested in his top initiative programs, but specifically in helping us maybe increase our data collection for marketing purposes. Would he have any ideas about helping us with this data collection around the 5, 10, and 15-mile radius census numbers, so we can, build that into our website and give potential businesses an idea of what the customer base could look like here in Long Grove based on drive time data. And he didn't have any specifics, but I'm going to follow up with him on that, because I do think that, that getting that data is a good fit for what they're doing, to help us with ideas of what is the market profile and demographic and income profile of potential consumers within a 5, 10, and 15-mile radius. And I know we got some of that data is available through Lake County Partners, so I know we can get some of that, but I wanted to specifically see what Roman could do for us along those lines. So I'm going to follow up with him a little bit more. We had kind of an informal and general discussion, and it seemed like they could potentially help us, but maybe it's something he needs to investigate a little further for us, and I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, I had a long discussion with Roman. He walked away with some homework though too as well, relative to the comp plan and various other chartering documents relative to the EDC and what we're after. I think to sum it up, currency, relevancy, and accuracy of that kind of data, not only, but foot traffic, anything that's a precursor to a decision-making for businesses coming to a particular area. And we talked at length about the profile of Long Grove and how to flip this sort of Louisiana-looking, long, elongated, a lot of coastline, shape that touches on so many different fairly well-developed communities and that sort of thing. Some of the east-west, north-south, and marrying that up with transportation data and that sort of stuff. So we talked about quite a few different topics on data, and it wasn't just, I think, just a retail-y sort of thing too. Our interest relative to what attracts potentially an industrial customer or a client or a siting of we talked data center, we talked academia, we talked healthcare, a lot of the things that we've talked about in the past as key investment areas. So I thought it was a good meeting. So we'll see where it goes.
I thought it was interesting, some of the sites that he shared with us in terms of what I would call geomapping, or just the one company that's volunteering, if you can make an appropriate project for them to create these maps that show key characteristics in a very narrowly defined area, so that we could maybe obtain a map, a nice colored, easy to read map that says there are lots of rich folks around here and you should come here because it's great, or whatever the messages you want to be. There are lots of well-educated workers around here. You should move your business here because whatever. But yeah, the availability of more and more information through the internet and through aggregating these and using these resources that are out there, just kind of doing nothing for anybody right now, is something I want to keep in the back of my mind as something to watch for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Roger and I were, I wanted you on the call, Roger, to make sure we had a tether directly into the interview results into EDC. So I'm glad we were able to tag team on that particular interview with him.
Me too.
So I guess that should be a follow-up item, Roger. That we follow up with Roman to see if he can help us, or at least the company that you're referring to, that can maybe help us develop a map, data map that would be available for for parties, looking for site selection.
My sense was that he needed several months to let this thing gestate, given the organization he's working with. And yeah, it'd be interesting to find out where it's gone and what his feelings are, but certainly not in 2 weeks.
Right. Maybe that we put that on later in the year then. But
Well,
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was just going to say that he's using the data for two things. One is to tweak past projects and how they can be improved, but also in screening and cultivating sort of an incubator sort of way, project ideas for the future. So he's using the data and the feedback on what's most useful to municipalities that way, which I thought was good because there's some forward-looking potential future projects in there too as well.
Right. So I think that's something we can follow up on, and maybe like you were saying, Roger, later in the year, not anything he can come up with, but I think there's some potential there for us because, taking that together with what the ICSC was saying, we do need to have that data relatively quickly available for, individuals looking for site selection in the area, what that data, what that demographic data looks like. So it's a good potential resource for us.
Do we know whether he's interviewed with Mina yet? That should be an interesting interview.
Yeah, I hoped he would. I'm not sure if she did sign up for an interview. It would be nice if she did with her, site selection background to help us, develop what we need. I don't know. I don't think she, but maybe that's something she can do too in the future is help us talk with Roman about that.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the work plan of the Long Grove Economic Development Commission. We've been kicking this around for some time now, and I emailed everybody with my suggestion, which is let's try parliamentary procedure to get this to go forward. If we can get a motion on the table to adopt something, then we can have a framework within which to, work away at it.
Roger, let's have a discussion first about Irwin, I think, added some budget items to the end of the plan, and I'd like to open that up and talk about that a little bit.
Well, the idea is not to have discussion again, because we've done that a lot. The idea is to have a concrete discussion about something that's actually on the table. If we don't like what we've come around to and we just need to talk some more, we can always table the motion, but at least we can say we've taken a step forward toward adopting something that we're supposed to adopt according to the ordinance that created us.
Roger, I think this is very comprehensive, and summarizes a number of conversations we've had recently and even going back to prior years. And I think it's a good start and something we should submit. We could always update for the next work plan. We could make a change. I don't remember, Pam, I think someone else must have added the budget items. I just don't remember that.
I did.
But I think this is very good. This is a big step, putting something in writing that we've been discussing for ages.
Oh yeah, no, I think this is great. The only thing I was going to suggest, Roger, is maybe that one category of hospitality. I don't know when we might be able to have any live meetings, but I know we talked about potentially inviting local businesses to a breakfast. I don't know if that's going to be possible in the next 6 months to a year. But that
we can deal with that by making a motion to amend once we get the motion on the table.
Okay, all right, that's fair. I'll put a motion out.
I moved,
There's a move. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So thank you. We've got a motion. Now, I'd like to be able to say we've done something to the village board that a little more concrete than we talked about it again. And this makes me happy anyway. So we've got it all in front of us. And there are things that are maybe too detailed, maybe not clear enough. But let's talk about them in terms of let's modify the motion. How about starting with, because it's, I think, relatively easy, this budget. I just threw that in kind of off the top of my head, and the numbers are totally arbitrary, but I think it was Mike Saletto said, you know, the budget is more or less a placeholder from our point of view, giving the village some kind of idea of what to do in making their budget as to what we think we might do. It's not going to say that just because we adopted it, this is the money we get, but to give them a sense of what we might spend. Subscriptions and memberships, I don't think we'll spend that much, but it's I think not an unreasonable number to throw at the board. Thoughts?
I think it's a reasonable number. I think that makes sense.
Anybody else?
I agree with Pam. I think it's very reasonable.
How about the publicity? You know, it's at some point, videos need to be cleaned up to be really useful, you know, and that's not something that I think you can count on having somebody to voluntarily do for nothing. And again, my number is really a stab. I asked one of my sons, who actually, as part of his job, does part of that for some social media. He said he started giving me a whole line of dependents that, you know, made it a big difference. How many edits you want, what kind of cuts you want, blah, 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 to the point where I just kind of threw up my hands and went, okay, who knows? But any other thoughts on, should we have a line item for publicity and an expense?
I think we should, and I think that's a very conservative number. Whether or not we spend $1 this year, you know, that remains to be seen, but you know, that's a real conservative number.
What would be a more realistic number?
You know, I think it's fine for a start, Roger. And we'll see, right? Again, I don't think there's going to be a need for even that much this year, but I think if we start getting into this, you could easily double that. But I think it's a good starting point.
Right. Hospitality was just coffee for meetings from the good old days when we all had Starbucks waiting for us in the morning. You know, something like that is a legitimate expense. What else might we include in our budget?
Well, as I was saying, Roger, I think we should increase that hospitality budget. I don't know when we can do a live breakfast, maybe for local businesses, but I'd like to have a number in there in case we can. You know, maybe I would like to see that at least double.
It sounds reasonable. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Anybody? How about a motion to amend to change the number from 250 to 500 or 750, whatever. Somebody make a motion.
I move that we amend it to change it from 250 to 500, the hospitality line in the meeting, in the budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion about that particular item? All opposed to the motion to amend? if any? Hearing none, the motion to amend carries. Now we've got, we're back to the table, the main motion. And Pam, you had some thoughts on things that maybe were, could use some work.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other expense items that we haven't covered. You know, we have been doing up to this point, in terms of grant applications, we've worked with folks in-house. Nina and I work with Jim Hogue and others, and Dave, you know, and Denise. We've worked in-house pretty much to develop some of our grants, but I'm wondering if we should at least plug some number in there. I know we talked about potentially working with a firm, that Midwest firm on Bike Pass. And they were quite reasonable. I don't know, we could maybe plug in a number of 500 or 1,000 in there for potential investigation of financing opportunities.
So this would be more or less a motion to amend the budget portion to provide an additional item for exploring funding sources.
Right, right.
Denise, can you tap that in there from your screen? Just exploring funding sources from right up above. Same language. And then, what did you say, Pam? 2,000?
I would, 1,000, I would say.
1,000? Anybody opposed to amending the document in that way? Or have any thoughts about what the number is or might not be? Okay.
I guess on hospitality, another thought, Roger, you know, that 500, we said 20 meetings at $10. We're going to have to adjust that.
Why don't we just take that out? Just say hospitality blank. Yeah. I don't feel any real need to have extreme detail in this. My understanding is it's just a general outline kind of thing, and certainly not a promise to get these things done, but it's at least a focus for us, and that's worthwhile.
Right, right. I think that's good.
Anything else in the bullet points above? We all agree we want to expand social media use. Lots of time talking about that. We have an example of that going on this morning in a few minutes. Ongoing constant communication, that's certainly what we've been talking about trying to do, and I think it's showing off benefits already. Denise, can you scroll up to the top? The bullet point, enhancing ongoing communication with Lake County partners, that's an example of something where, in my mind, that's more detail than we need, but I see no problem with having it there. I think it's a genuine goal or plan at this point for us. The first bullet point, acting as a sounding board for businesses. I had a reaction to it, which was that the village board has not shown much interest in having the EDC doing anything like that, except maybe after the fact. So maybe that's, I guess putting it in would be aspirational in my mind, and not necessarily a, oh, we've been doing that, so we're going to do that again. We've got the example of the discussions with the car wash people, but beyond that, the decisions about the additional nursing home south of the Sunset Plaza. There was some talk briefly about having the EDC involved, but then it was decided that that was not appropriate or useful or whatever, and it went away. There was some discussion just recently about some developers who were coming up before the village board on, is it the South 15 or, and there was some talk about having EDC do that, and then that was pulled back. So I'm like, is this a realistic thing in terms of what our goals and priorities are? Any thoughts, anybody?
Well, I think that the primary goal on this particular line item is the and at least from my perspective as an ex-trustee, the board does the best it can in trying to understand the business model and the value proposition that particular ideas being brought to the village may be able to be delivered. We have never had, anybody either analytically or otherwise combat what may be proposed by a developer as this big boon. We don't have people that validate assumptions. We don't have people that really vet or do due diligence on a business model. I think a couple of things at the EDC with the car wash, I think was very effective relative to churn. And there were a lot of details that Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals were pursuing too as well. But I think that the idea is bolting EDC and its analytical brain around the business model and the whether it's a revenue or it's attracting foot traffic or whatever. From a business development standpoint, that perspective and that seat at the table in evaluating options that and opportunities that are either coming to the village or being sought out in compliance with our comp plan and everything else. So it's a very specific thread and focus that I had always envisioned EDC focusing on in that process of government and municipalities processing these ideas. We have never had a developer comes in and proposes whatever it might be, and everybody sits around and looks at each other. Well, who's going to validate that assumption? Who's going to validate, a subdivision comes in and, details about, well, the average person in that with that price point, so on and so forth, has on average 2.6 cars. Well, that input into whether it's going to drive traffic, whether it's going to close things up and that sort of thing, shut things down, I think are things that ordinarily don't get a very good look, vetting, due diligence applied to it as we process these ideas. So that's really, I think this line item is kind of important. If you were to take the Plan Commission Zoning Board of Appeals agendas for the last 18 months, in my view, a working, fully functioning EDC for anything commercial or anything retail or anything sales tax oriented would have had some kind of EDC review and input or opinion letter or something, you know, as part of the process of evaluating these ideas. End of comment.
So I'm wondering if the line that says specific activity to be continued will include, what if will was changed to may? Because I think we all want the village board and the EDC to work closer together, but we're not there yet. I think we're going to be hopefully headed that way. So I was just thinking of changing the word will to may include. I'd have to read, you know, the next couple of paragraphs to see if it makes sense. I'm just throwing that out there.
Of all the bullet points on this work plan, I think that is the most useful in terms of what the EDC might contribute to the village. In terms of matching up with reality, I feel a disconnect. And if everybody else is good with this, I'm all for leaving it there right at the top. Putting in may instead of shall probably makes sense. But I don't want to say, let's just forget about this. I just want to say, as long as we're having this discussion, let's be realistic about it and about where we might go with this. I can't speak for Mina, but I suspect that this is the kind of thing that she really came to the commission to do. Having Jay around, you know, Jay, even though he's moved out of the village, has said to me a couple of times, he definitely wants to stay involved. I'm sure he's watching the agendas and wants to try to do what he can to keep the local economy healthy and not put in a bunch of just fill it in with whatever kinds of businesses. So I'm just throwing this out to get a discussion and make sure we all have a chance to talk through this before we go, okay, this is our work plan for now. Other thoughts? Other discussion? All right, well, let's take a vote. And we're going to call for the vote by person because that's what these pandemic rules say. And just vote yes or no with respect to adopting this in this form as our aspirational work plan for the coming fiscal year. In alphabetical order. Pam Brown?
Yes, I approve.
Mike Elliott?
Yes.
Mina's not here. Me, yes. Erwin?
Yes.
All right, so step forward. We've got a work plan adopted that we can pass on to the village board.
Yeah, and Roger, I want to point out one thing about, you know, the discussion we've had. You know, it may be aspirational, but the bullet points under that item are things that we are working on, you know, developing a process and flow chart for new businesses to follow, and working on the EDC microsite on the website to include, you know, our vision and showcasing properties and, you know, and marketing. I mean, those are things we are doing. So, you know, maybe there's a broader goal there, you know, and part of it being aspirational, but the sub point under it, I think if, you know, there is a question, those are things we are doing.
Yeah, I think that I think we want to continue to invite in people to help educate us about what the world is about of economic development.
Right.
And having meetings where it's not about doing some project, but I think it's really good that we're moving toward more of a series of status reports on projects that we've got ongoing and how we're doing in terms of making progress and getting them done. So I think that's all to the good. I think that is the last thing on the agenda, other than Kevin and Erwin putting on a show for us. But that is what you can do, right, Kevin?
That's right. This is the Irwin Show. Yeah. Okay, to start then, Roger?
Well, we said we'd start at 8 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we've got 5 minutes, and we've got the potential for new business and or new thoughts anybody might have about what we might be working on or doing in the future beyond what we've talked about already.
Yeah, Roger, actually, I was thinking about the beginning of the conversation of the shopping centers and Pam's report and your statement about, Long Grove being like Rush Street and Park Ridge, what you saw there. I'm just wondering, besides that, there's some theme, something we talk about in Brainstorm that circles around technology. Maybe we can do some training programs in conjunction with Lake County, some basics, some tutoring. Maybe there's some, after we get done with the pandemic, a school for teaching or a little workshop for teaching on the IT side, the digital side. I just think there's a whole thing. That's where the world's going, okay? So if the world's changing and going there, where does Long Grove fit in? Maybe at the Flanagan's or the CF building, maybe there's some carve out. I mentioned 1871. Mike, do I have that right? Is that the incubator downtown? Maybe there's something out in the suburbs we can do in conjunction with one of the colleges or some training program. I just think we got to make Long Grove famous for more than it is now. So we need another line of quote unquote business.
I think that's a good point, Erwin, and I think that's something we should explore with Ron Lands when he's with us on September 22nd, because he has a background in that. He was the head of the technology group in Grays Lake, for CLC, and he has a background in creating, a technology portion of a college. And I think he's a great one to really explore that whole idea. Plus, he knows a little bit about CFI now. So I'd like, if we could give some thought to that and some things we can maybe probe him, in terms of doing something like that in Long Grove, I think that would be excellent.
What about getting one of the drivers from the innovation center up on Route 45, who put together? That's a big development, and the tenants that they have, at least according to the signage out front, are fair-sized companies. But CFI isn't in a position to take on the large number of biggish tenants that they did. Maybe there's some other market level for people who are. The idea, as I get it, is that innovators feed each other simply by being in proximity, meeting each other over the lunch and sharing ideas and whatnot. Getting one of those growing here sounds like a great idea.
So Pam, will you talk to Ron then about, or shoot him an email that's we'd like to talk about or explore or brainstorm on that? And Roger, I do like your idea of the Innovation Center. Maybe there's someone who heads that up who could give us some thoughts, make a presentation, how they did it. Because there may be, these are big companies, there may be a level of smaller companies, entrepreneurs, that would be looking for something. I think someone contacted us a couple of months ago who was a Long Grove resident who wanted to start a business. I think it had something to do with artificial intelligence. I mean, it'd be nice if we had something to discuss in that regard. So anyway, that's maybe another line of quote unquote business, what Long Grove can become famous for besides the downtown area.
For the next meeting, we can certainly grill him on that. I'll see what I can do with the Innovation Center people, see if I can find somebody.
Yeah,
By
that
the
would
way,
be great.
the RoboChef CEO president, I think, was on one of the calls here. He just presented this last Saturday at an incubator, small incubator as well. So
Great.
he's moving along. I think he did finally take space up in Libertyville at the Innovation Park. Unfortunately, couldn't find anything here, but anyway, we keep the ties going.
Sounds good. All right. Well, it's 8 o'clock, and as promised, the next item on the agenda is our "How'd You Do It" segment. That we've got Kevin and Erwin.
Yeah, great. So if everybody would take your cursor and mute yourself except Erwin, and then would you go up to speaker view, and you'll get a chance to see Erwin when he's speaking. If you want, you can go to full screen off to the right, and that'll give you a bunch of little pictures on the right. You might be at the very top. If you go to the very top, then you can take that one small line and that'll get rid of all the pictures, and then you'll get a chance to see Erwin and perhaps myself. We'll see how that works. Erwin, thank you very much for agreeing for this. We're looking forward to it. In addition to teaching at Loyola, I get a chance to teach physician leaders around the country and a little bit in Europe every year. And every program that I do for the last 30 years or so, I interview somebody either from the audience or a prominent member of their group. And it's usually the most popular part because we get a chance to kind of get somebody's thinking. I call it Larry King Live. I have to stop calling it that because about 30% of the audience doesn't know who Larry King is. So I think what we'll start doing maybe is we'll call this the Legends of Long Grove. Would that be okay, Erwin, if we called you that?
Sounds great. Glad to kick it off. Glad to kick it off.
So there's a show on the radio called How I Built This. And they interview people who have built companies. They ask them about their successes and some of the things that didn't work so well. And they get a chance to kind of pick at somebody's brain. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to ask you a few questions like Larry King used to do. I'm just going to work from my natural and curiosity. You and I don't know each other. I haven't talked to you before. And then we're going to ask the audience to ask you some questions in a little while. So those of you that are in the audience, start thinking up questions you're going to ask him. So Erwin, before I ask you how you built this, what did you build? Can you tell us a little bit about your career and the company that you built?
Yeah, so I am a CPA by education. I practiced in public accounting 40 plus years. And the market I served was privately held, closely held businesses, no public companies. And I was involved in the basics starting out of doing accounting work, tax work, and I gravitated towards helping business owners achieve their goals. So working with them on what their individual goals were or trying to figure out what their goals were. So over time, I gravitated from doing the work to really working with the business owners and figuring out what they wanted to be when they grow up.
So you were thinking about not just sort of the detail that CPAs think about, but you gravitated towards really helping people think about the big part of their business. Where am I going? What is this all about?
Right. I think the business owners, like a lot of people, focusing on the day-to-day activities. They don't step back and think about where I'm going to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, or 10 years. And then all of a sudden, the 10 years, they're there and say, what have I accomplished? You know, I built my business. I'm not sure I'm in the right space. I'm not sure what the next steps are. They're thinking day to day, how am I going to get the next sale? How am I going to develop the next invention?
when did this occur to you? I mean, there's a lot of CPAs in the world that are doing tax returns and stuff like that, and they stay in that space. When did it occur to you that business owners needed this other piece from you?
I would say after about 5 years in the profession that the business owners were asking me about their financials, their gross profit, their inventory turn. I was getting deeply involved in not just answering the question, but learning about their industry, going to their association meetings. And I saw a big void for many years in services that CPA firms were providing. So
this was maybe 35 years ago, right? That you're doing this?
Yes, yes. So as I was growing in the profession, I was doing a lot of that work for our clients. And about 20 years ago, I woke up one day and came to the conclusion of maybe it's time that I develop my own firm with my mission, my own goals, and I saw a big void in the marketplace. There weren't a lot of CPAs who were providing those value-added services. And Kevin, let me break it down so you could understand what the services that I was looking at. In the CPA profession, called Type 1 services, those are the services that business owners need. They need their annual tax return prepared, they need a sales tax return prepared, they need a payroll tax prepared, and they also need an annual financial statement, most likely for their bank or the business owner. So those are what I call Type 1 services. They need those services and they go shopping for those services. Type 2 services are helping the client owner doing consulting. For instance, helping get that increased line of credit, helping them hire a controller, helping write business procedures. So things they need, but they would never think about going to their CPA firm. So there was a natural expansion of client services without having to go out and resell those, pick up a new client each time. Then I saw something called Type 3 services that privately held businesses never even thought about. For instance, how to acquire a competitor, how to put in a long-term incentive plan to keep people, how to set up an ESOP if you're thinking about turning over your business to employees, or what do I do with my family business? How do I get my children involved? Or if they're not interested, do I sell the company? Do I keep the company and bring in professional management? So it's getting inside the business owner's head. And that's what I call the Type 3 services. So I saw a big void in the marketplace. So what did I do 20 years ago? I wrote a business plan.
So is this like you? I mean, when you were in school, were you kind of like this, where you were thinking outside the box and thinking in these new areas? Or was this confined to this one day when you woke up 20 years ago and said, wow, there's a new service that I could be providing?
Well, maybe I'll go way back to when I was in college. And originally I wanted to be a stockbroker. I wanted to do something in business and I wanted to be, I thought, a stockbroker. So I took the first few accounting classes and I did very well. And I kept taking that path and I ended up getting my degree in accounting and going for my CPA exam. And then I went into public accounting, but I guess my natural tendency was to do more consulting and entrepreneurship type items. So for many years, for 20 years, I was doing more of the consulting. The pencil pushing was being done by staff at that point.
Yeah.
So, I woke up saying, 20 years ago, hey, maybe it's time I just did something myself. I see this void. I have the background. I'm not sure how I can put it together with just myself.
Yeah.
And I was encouraged to put together a business plan, which was a 3-year business plan, which brought me from day one with no clients, no staff, okay, just some overhead in an office, to developing a firm with 55 people, 15 years later.
How did that
And
go over with the family when you came up with this idea of no money, no clients, and you said, I have a great 3-year business plan?
oh, I forgot, two children in college. Okay, I want to add that. My wife was very supportive of that, and it worked out well. I had the whole family behind me in that regard because they knew this is
Yeah.
what I did my whole life, and if I was, and I would be successful in it. It was on a time. But that's a good question, Kevin. It really helped me every day as I was building my business.
Yeah, because I think when you see somebody that's as successful as you have been, people assume that somehow this was always successful. And there was this one day when you had no clients and you had this massive idea, and you had to figure out, how do I implement this thing now?
That's right.
You were
That's
doing
right.
the exact same thing that you were consulting these type 3 services with yourself, weren't you?
Right, that's correct. So let me just give you an example. After I started the business, I had a business owner call me who I knew from an association. And he said, Erwin, I'd like you to handle a project for me. And then it was 1 project and 2 projects and 3 projects. And finally, I asked him, I said, Bill, you've got a great relationship with the CPA firm you've had for many, many years. Why are you having me do this? He says, you were so nice to me in helping me and giving me advice in my business as a friend for many, many years, and I wanted to pay you back. So getting back to Kevin, your question, I was doing a lot of that work and building a foundation of goodwill with the community.
That's really brilliant because, you know, I ask people, have you ever asked your boss why they hired you? And they say, no, I've never done that. And you were smart enough back then to say, with all the resources this person had, why are you choosing me? It's good to know that, right?
Right, it is. And so how did I learn some of that consulting, whether it's type 2 or type 3 consulting? Attended a lot of seminars. I was very lucky that education was very important when I first started out in public accounting. And it would be the technical area, audit and tax, and the non-technical, more of the consulting and I'll say people type getting together in that regard. And I read a lot. And I also looked at some of my very successful clients and picked out pieces of good and learned pieces of bad from them. So, and that's over a long period of time. I sort of built the foundation in the financial community with business owners, associations, financial institutions, money managers, and they pay off. You don't know when, but they pay off.
I got 2 questions. Then we're going to ask the audience to ask you some questions. So audience, start getting ready. The first question is, when you were a little boy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a business owner.
Really? Back then?
Yeah. It would now, I don't know what you consider a little boy. I'm talking 10, 12 years old.
Yeah.
As a little boy, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, but at 10 or 12, I wanted to do something in business.
Wow. Did you have models like parents or family that were in business?
No, I think that people around me were really employees working for bigger companies. I saw some of the quote unquote pains or things they went through as they were employees rather than employers. And I said, my goal is to be an employer, not an employee.
You were going in different, sort of like your life. You're going to go in a different direction and answer needs that people don't even know they have.
Right, that's correct. And think outside the box. You have to think outside the box.
Yeah. One of my friends says, don't think outside the box, throw the box out the window. And it sounds like that's one of the things you did. Second question I have for you, this is the Economic Development Council of Along Grove. If I was a merchant now, or if I'm deciding to come in with my new restaurant or my new idea, what do you think is something I really have to do in order to become more successful, to take the next right step as a downtown merchant or as someone who's considering coming into Long Grove with their business?
So I'd say the first thing is you really need a plan. in writing and very specific with line items, dates, accountability, and budgets, okay? Then you need someone to look at that who is not afraid to tell you that you're wrong or you're crazy and what you put down, and help tweak that, You don't want to ask one of your relatives or one of your other family members. You may want to ask someone who's in your business line, but maybe a different part of the country, maybe someone from an association, maybe another professional. You have to have someone really analyze that. And I still have my original business plan that I put together with a lot of red marks, because someone I had give me some feedback. Lots of red marks, lots of lines, lots of cross-outs. So, and you have to have someone get into your head to ask you the questions. What happens if you don't have the sales over these 6 months? Are you willing to borrow against your house, to borrow more money, to go to the bank, to sign personally? Are you going to be working 60 hours a week? Are you going to be doing all the things you have to? So you really have to have someone interview you.
Yeah. So passion, mission, enthusiasm is not enough.
No. It's all important. It's all important. You know, you have to add hard work, some luck, and people helping you out. And don't afraid to be honest with yourself as you go along. You're going to have failures as you go along, and hopefully there'll be successes when you get to the end of the line.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, will you go to the gallery view? We'll bring everybody back, and you can open up your videos. It's always best to be the first person to ask the question. So who would like to be the first person to ask a question? Just jump in.
Erwin, if there was one thing that you'd do over the life of your career here, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to answer that. There's two things. One is to start the business earlier in my life, but that's hard when you have little kids running around and you have mortgages and loans and everything else. But two, on the business side, I think that I was on the fast track with growing the business, but I think I would have invested more money back in the business to get an exponential return early on.
Great, thank you.
Those things.
Good question. Somebody else, another question?
Erwin, did you ever think about specifically where you were going to locate your business, or was it just, I'm here and I'm going to grow where I am?
Well, actually, Roger, that's really, really good, because my whole life I was taking the train downtown, then taking a bus to my office on North Michigan Avenue, and then the reverse route. So it was an hour and a half commute each way. So I ended up locating my first office in Northbrook, which was about 20 minutes from my house at that time. That's how I picked the location. Now, as the business grew, and maybe this gets back to Mike's question also, as the business grew and the people, college grads were moving downtown, there was a big void because we would hire people out of college. They would work for us for a year or two, then get an apartment in Wrigleyville or River North, and then subsequently quit. So we did all the training, and they would go work for a downtown firm. So one of the things that we tried to do early on, but it didn't work, was to find a downtown location, but we couldn't staff it properly. Then we looked at buying a downtown firm, and we spent lots and lots of time, many years, trying to find the right firm that fit into our organization. And well, what's happened now is no one's in downtown and no one's in the suburbs, unfortunately. But Roger, I started out in the suburbs because of the commute.
Yeah. Somebody else? Question? Can ask them anything you want. Erwin, how about? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Erwin, James, how do you keep? You seem like you lost employees after you trained them just to the city living. After what other, were there any tricks that you had to keep well-trained employees besides them wanting to move to the city?
Yes, we've had many situations that we presented to our people. One is you could work from home if if you're out at a client for a half a day, you don't, and you're let's say in the West Loop, you don't have to come back to Northbrook to work the other half of the day. You have your laptop, you could work at home. Maybe you can do some marketing, maybe you can entertain a client. So we tried to figure out what fit into that individual. We even said, if you want, we'll rent a temporary office downtown for you. The second part was more money to compensate for commuting, time, and fuel. But it was very tough to get people to stay. We had to spend time with them and telling them what their career path would be. It's not just don't get hung up on the commute. Let's talk about what your career path could be, where you could go down the road, what you could achieve with the right type of firm. And we did have some successes with that, but I would say that 80% just wanted to be downtown with their friends.
So this human relations skills then was important in your business, really understanding the employee's mindset and in not just accommodating to them, but creatively figuring out how do we integrate them into my business.
Right. Let me give you one other example on that. In 2008, 2009, we all know what happened, that we had the banking and economic crisis. And unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, we had to terminate 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
And on the human side of this, I knew there were some young staff who lived in the Wrigleyville area that it wasn't a phone call to them. I actually went and met with them at night, 3 people, to talk to them about their future, what could happen, why these people aren't with us, and a little bit about business. And those 3 people stayed with us for a long time,
Where did you learn that? I mean, a lot of CPAs, the stereotype CPA is in many people's minds is they're just worried about the data and they're not that great with people. Where did you learn how to be better with people?
I think I saw it through my clients. I saw how they work with their customers, how they work with their people. It was an education for me in my early years to spend time with my clients, both at their place of business and socially. And I learned a lot from them. And I took, like I said before, the good and the bad.
So you were a sponge back then.
That's correct.
Somebody else? Question? Anybody?
Maybe I can make, Kevin, one more comment, because we never finished the end of this. So in the business was very successful and we grew, but the world changed. We were able to acquire larger and larger business clients. We had a few niches in manufacturing and healthcare and high net worth. And our clients were becoming more complex, A, because of the tax law, B, of requirements of their business. Some of them were going international, and we just didn't have all the resources that we needed. So in 2013 and 14, I saw something else that was happening in the business besides not having a downtown location. We were not able to close on the opportunities we had and provide our clients with the best service and product. So at that time, I belonged to an international association of accounting firms about our size, some larger. And in every meeting we would have, someone would sit down next to me and say, hey, we want to be in Chicago. We see your statistics. We know you're a good firm. And after saying no many times, I finally thought about what's the future. If we're going to play in the bigger leagues, we need a bigger firm and more resources. So into 2016, we ended up merging into a firm that wanted to be in Chicago. They were a national firm, had the same values we did, and it worked out very well. I ended up working there for 3 years as a partner, and then May of 19, I retired from the CPA profession. But right now, I do some consulting. I sit on advisory boards for about a half a dozen companies and have a great time thinking of things outside the box for them to consider. So it's great.
You're still back in that type 3 service, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and as part of this, Erwin's been gracious enough to take questions that we had absolutely no rehearsal for whatsoever. So here's what we'd like to do. I'd like as many of you as possible in a few minutes, would you tell Erwin directly, what did you like, learn, or appreciate about what he said? And the only thing he's going to say is thank you if he wants to, but he's not going to take any more questions. He's just going to say thank you. So it's always best to be the first person to offer this. What did you like, learn, or appreciate about what he just said? Unmute yourself and jump in.
No, I appreciated.
Erwin, it was
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Erwin, it was really useful to hear you say how important it is to network, to move beyond just getting the work done and getting to know other people in your business, and how that has led to much of your success, or at least it sounds that way. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Rob.
Erwin, you say thank you.
Or
Thank
not.
you.
Somebody else?
Thank you.
This is James, and we really enjoyed. I'm here with Jonathan, an associate of mine, and we really enjoyed hearing about your business plan and the background that you have and how you successfully build up your business over the years.
Oh, great. Thank you for the comment.
By the way, James is a JD and a CPA, so he's got a little bit of mojo going on in his brain like you do.
Hey, let me just mention, if anyone has questions after that, please feel free to reach out to me. Be glad to help anyone I can.
Thank you. Somebody else?
I think, Erwin, your commitment to continuous learning personally and otherwise is just awesome. And the fact that you're participating in Long Grove's EDC after so many years in the industry, and you're bringing the skills and the talents that you've amassed over years to this commission. It's just, thank you very, very much for your involvement and continued, devotion to this community as well.
Well, glad to do it, Michael.
You know, Erwin, we're going to wind up. What impressed me the most about you was from 10 years old, you're thinking differently. I'm not going to be an employee like these other people I see. I'm going to be a business owner. And that really stuck with you. And then your commitment to business owners really fueled your career way beyond what a mere mortal CPA would be thinking about at 20 years ago. And then now today, you're still devoted to, the village of Long Grove, who is trying to think of those things. So it's just been delightful to talk to you. I really appreciate you being our first legend of Long Grove.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for moderating.
I was interviewing some doctors once. These are fourth year. They're going to be chiefs. So it's a big deal for some doctors, about 60 of them, young people. And I'm interviewing. So I try to pick somebody out who's a little different. And I picked out a young woman who is a dentist. And all the others are MDs and DOs. And so I was interviewing her. And at one point, one of the doctors, I said, would you like to ask a question? And one of the doctors leaned forward and looked at her and said, what's your favorite tooth? And everybody laughed. And she said, oh, and she got all excited. And then she said, she named the tooth. It's 3 back from your canine. This is a great tooth. And she talked about the architecture of the tooth and what its function was. Very interesting. Everybody was like, holy crap, I didn't know that teeth were that important, right?
That's great.
Later, a surgeon told me, he said, she reminded me of the fire that's inside of me when I went to medical school. He said, now I know why I really want to do what I do. I went to my dentist, by the way, a few weeks later, and I told him the story, and he said, Kevin, that is a great tooth. He said, if you want one tooth in your mouth, that's the one you want. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And Erwin, today you reminded me personally of, yes, level 1's important. Start working on level 3. Thank you very much. You did a great job.
You're welcome.
Nice job. Well done.
And we're supposed to give an applause by waving our hands on Zoom. So you get a standing ovation. Thank you. Turn it over to Roger.
Thank you very much, Kevin. That was
You're welcome.
insightful on a whole bunch of levels. Hopefully we can get some more of this going on. Anybody else, any new business before we working out of here?
I'd like to thank Erwin also. You made my morning and hopefully my day. I enjoyed hearing you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. Glad to do it. Glad to do it.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Then we just sit around and talk for a while. Okay.
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
For us. Thank you. Any opposed to the motion to adjourn? Hearing none. The meeting is formally adjourned. Thank you all very much for one of the more interesting meetings I think we've had.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.